Hey guys, this is Wraith, author of the gay vampire romance Everdark that you are about to listen to, performed by a multi-actor cast. The podcast would not be possible without her Grace Reed studio, which provides the excellent voice talent, and of course, the support of the Wraith Rain members who are subscribers to my site, wraithrain.com, which you will learn about down below and in the podcast. I hope you enjoy how the talented actors bring these vampires and their world of darkness, mystery, and eternal love to life. Now let's get down to it.
Last time on Everdark, Balthazar offered to become master to Julian and feed both him and Christian due to King Damon being a no-show. Christian doesn't trust that Balthazar's motives are altogether altruistic, and he intends to find out the truth. Everdark, Episode 14, Choices.
Can I see you outside, Balthazar?
Christian asked. He pointed towards the door to the hallway. He wanted to talk to the vampire lord in private before this conversation with Julia went any farther. Balthazar was incredibly smart, and things were going way too quickly for either him or Julian to think clearly with a man like him pulling their strings. Julian looked so pale and wan that Christian's protective instincts were on high alert. The vampire lord froze, as if it was clearly an unexpected request. Christian, though, had made his voice sound as if he wanted to simply talk to the man and wasn't angry with him or perturbed in any way. He already knew that this would cause Balthazar to be agreeable, even though he seemed quite enraptured with Julian and hardly looked like he wanted to leave his best friend's bedside.
Does he realize that most people feel that way about Julian? He'll have to get in line.
A small smile graced Balthazar's rather plush lips. He did have a good mouth. An excellent mouth, really. If Christian had met him under other circumstances, he might have taken him to bed. Well, he would have if Balthazar had not spoken too much before then and annoyed him. The vampire lord rose up from the bed gracefully. Everything the man did was graceful, an athletic grace, strong and sure and agile. Christian watched with a sort of fascination as he could see the vampire lord's leg muscles flex and release beneath his tailored slacks. Balthazar was a clothes horse, as he had discovered himself from the closet, but he did wear those clothes well. Of course, Christian. I'll wait outside, the vampire lord said with a bow. Balthazar then touched Julian's leg gently, which had Christian baring his fangs, and said to his best friend, "Do not worry, Julian. You are safe here. You are home."
Thanks,
Julian answered uncertainly. Christian forced his face back into a mild expression as the vampire lord turned and went out the door. Christian waited until the door shut behind him before he turned back to his best friend. He drew a blanket over Julian's body up to his chin. His best friend gave him a quirked grin.
Thanks, Mom,
Julian quipped.
Just rest, okay? I'll be right back,
Christian said. Julian grabbed his arm as he was turning.
Hold on. What are you up to? What are you going to talk to him about that you don't want me to hear? It's not that I don't want you to hear. It's...
Christian glanced towards the shut door. Speaking of hearing, he was pretty sure that Balthazar could hear them. His own hearing kept popping in and out, giving him the startling ability at times to hear everything within the house. It allowed him, for example, to hear the tap of feet upstairs, Maddie's voice as she murmured to Elena, and the creaks of the house simply settling. It was fascinating. Everything about this new existence would have to be explored to the fullest.
And I must have Julian by my side to do it.
He focused back on his best friend and covered the hand that held onto his arm.
I need to make sure that this is the right thing. Drinking from him, I mean. I know he's lying in some way, or at least shading the truth somewhat. We're not hearing the whole story from him. There's too much we don't know.
Julian nodded and gave one of those heartbreaking grins.
Does it matter? What? Of course it matters.
Christian looked at his best friend repressively. This wasn't like Julian to be so trusting. Balthazar was a vampire, and Julian had hated them all until a few hours ago. Now his best friend was willing to just join Lord Ravencroft without full data?
Christian, we're not going to know everything we need to know before we have to make a decision. We're going to have to go with our guts on this one,
Julian explained. Christian pinched the top of his nose.
This may be the most important decision we make in our lives, Julian, which could be, well, eternal. It could impact so many things that we have no idea about. I know.
Julian looked impossibly weary for a moment, and he shut his eyes. Christian watched him and thought he might have gone to sleep, but then Julian's eyelids opened.
The only thing I care about is that we're together. As do I.
Christian's hand curled into fists for a moment.
But Balthazar has convinced me that we cannot just go off on our own. Not yet. And that was before he explained about what might happen to you not feeding from a master. And you too.
Julian licked his dry lips. Christian bobbed his head in assent. He wasn't sure how he felt about drinking from Balthazar yet. It seemed quite the intimate act, and he was having a great deal of trouble trusting the man already.
It's far easier to tally what we do know than what we don't,
Julian said, and Christian knew from the tone he was taking that he was going to lay out facts to him to persuade him of what to do. He wasn't wrong.
Balthazar turned you, saving you from death. That's definitely one point in his favor, in terms of us both choosing to be with him. He didn't do it for altruistic reasons. He seems to be taking an inordinate amount of pleasure in the fact that he did turn me.
Christian glanced over at the closed door again and pictured Balthazar pressing his ear to the door, eager to hear what Christian was saying about him. It made him unwilling to say many good things. Julian listed off the next point.
2, he came and saved me.
That was very true. Balthazar had not hesitated to put himself and his people in danger to get Julian.
I saw what he did to those other vampires,
Julian pointed out.
That was something.
That had been rather incredible. Christian had almost felt the mental command Balthazar had used to stop the entire room from moving. He had wanted to see how Balthazar, Arceus, and Ridley had erased the minds of the vampires to see if he might sense something there too about how it was done. But he had not wanted to leave Julian alone in the car with Sophia Strange. She certainly fit her name, and so he'd remained with them both. She'd given him a small smile and said,
"Don't worry, Christian. You'll learn it all and more."
It had been as if she could read his mind, or see the future. She'd gone back to humming to herself and jiggling one of her feet. He'd been rather glad to escape from the car.
And,
Julian said, interrupting his thoughts,
if he could do that to a whole room of vampires, that means he could definitely have done it to you. Be doing it to you. But you're still you, Christian.
Christian snapped back to attention. He thought of Julian's words. It was true. Balthazar had not used any powers against him. From what he understood from the overheard conversation between Balthazar and Arceus, there was supposed to be some kind of link between them as well, since he was Balthazar's fledgling, that would make him even more susceptible to doing what Balthazar commanded. But he felt no compulsion to do as the man said whatsoever. Balthazar, evidently, had chosen not to inflict his will upon him.
Fair enough. That's true,
Christian admitted.
And he wants to keep us together,
Julian said as his final point.
which, to me, is pretty damned awesome. I wouldn't go that far. I think he has fantasies of, well, do you know how some men are about twins? I think he has a thing for us.
Christian remarked dryly.
Rather like some of those fans who do write that smut about us.
Julian let out a bark of laughter.
Really? He dreams of us both on our knees, pleasuring him or something? Didn't you notice how his eyes lit up when he talked about us both feeding from him? I'm pretty damn sure he's been fantasizing about us for some time.
Christian crossed his arms over his chest. Julian's eyes sparkled.
Are you sure you would mind that? He's just your type. No, he's not. I can't believe you're even saying that. Our situation, Julian, is serious.
Christian reminded. Julian smiled wanly at him.
I didn't think I was going to see you again, let alone be talking about who we're going to be spending eternity with, so everything else seems a little unimportant. Not that it is, but just, I'm taking it seriously, I swear.
Christian immediately softened.
I'm sorry. I know that you're taking this seriously, but a little levity is likely warranted, considering that we're vampires, which is utterly fascinating. Yeah, I bet you're psyched to start performing experiments and stuff. I am.
A flicker of pain crossed Julian's face, and Christian's heart thumped wildly.
What is it, Julian? Oh, my stomach. It feels like it's eating itself,
Julian admitted. He grabbed one of the bags of blood and made a moe of disgust.
Why don't these look yummy?
Christian grabbed the other and squished the liquid inside. He, too, was unimpressed with the liquid, though his stomach rumbled.
Perhaps once we open them, the smell will make them more appetizing.
Julian scowled down at the plastic bag. He sniffed it, which had Christian snorting.
Julian, they'll just smell like sterile packaging until you open them, even with our heightened senses,
Christian said with a wry smile.
Yeah, that's about it.
Julian's expression grew rather impish.
Balthazar smells a bit better.
Christian's eyebrows lifted as he said a little stiffly.
I suppose he does.
Julian became serious.
I'm just not sure if I can imagine biting him, you know? I mean, like sinking our teeth into his skin. Drinking. His blood, hot and salty, on our tongues.
Christian found his heart pounding again as he imagined just that. He could almost taste the vampire lord's skin on his tongue. Balthazar smelled of high-end cologne with notes of cinnamon and cloves. His flesh would be soft with a little spring as his fangs pierced it. There would be a hot gush of blood that would tingle as it went down his throat. Christian swallowed. It was disturbing how easy these things sprang to his mind.
I control my body. My body does not control me. Christian?
Julian tilted his head so that he could look into Christian's eyes.
My eyes are silver now. Not like they were. Vampire eyes. What?
Christian stammered out.
You want to drink blood from Balthazar, don't you?
Julian grinned.
What? No. I mean, I don't know. Anything is more appealing than this bag.
He dipped his head towards the abandoned bags.
I'm glad you like him, Christian. That's good.
Julian said with disturbing enthusiasm.
I thought he was our enemy. I'm so glad I was wrong. You think I like Balthazar?
Christian stared hard at Julian. His best friend gave him a raised eyebrow.
I mean, what am I walking into here? I think I hear General Akbar yelling something about it being a trap. You do not know Balthazar well. Other than knowing the man can literally stop a room with his mind? No, I don't know him.
Julian grinned.
He is quite emotive.
Julian snickered.
Oh no, he feels things.
Christian narrowed his eyes.
No, that would be foolish to be annoyed about that. We all feel things. It's that he talks about what he feels that's the problem. At length, volubly. And he shows his emotions too, I bet.
Julian's lips were suspiciously twitching.
You know how I feel about emotive people? You are the only one I allow in my life. Emotive types are much too messy,
Christian said.
You know that. Uh-huh. Yeah, I do.
Julian was still smiling.
You're humoring me.
More narrowed eyes.
No. Well, yeah. I don't know. Things are so crazy, aren't they? I should be glad that you're being sensible.
Julian sagged back against the pillows.
We must learn everything we can. Even if Balthazar is all right, we must be sure.
Christian held on to his logic, his senses, even as he knew that they were at sea.
I've got to see if he's the right one for us to stay with. I mean, what about this Damon? What's he like? You don't remember? No, you wouldn't. You'd passed out when he burst out of the tomb and took down the two other vampires.
Julian's eyes went distant.
He's different. Strong, but weak isn't the right word. Sensitive? Fragile? No. But maybe skittish. He's had bad experiences with fledglings dying on him, so he doesn't want to get attached, I think. Are you wondering if he would be a better person to align ourselves with than Balthazar? I am. If it is as easy to change masters, and I cannot believe they make us call them that, as Balthazar claims, then we should consider which vampire master is best for both of us. You said Damon sent you to save me, but he couldn't come with you?
Christian asked carefully. Had Damon abandoned his friend? Julian nodded and opened his mouth, but then closed it, only to open it again.
I don't know if he wants me, Christian, let alone both of us. He still thinks I'm not going to survive the turning. And if you would drink from him, you might not make it either.
What if you actually had to drink blood from a human being to survive? In fiction, things can be made as scary or sexy as the storyteller wants, but would you be able to stomach it in real life? This is the question I asked the cast of Everdark in this week's mini Q&A. So I hope you listen to the mix of comedic, thoughtful, and disgusted reactions from the actors.
Alarm raced through Christian.
What are you talking about? You're fine.
Or had the look of pain been more than hunger? No, he would not think that.
All his other fledglings died. His blood is too powerful or something.
Julian had his hands in his lap. He stared down at them.
And he chose them carefully to be his fledglings. But me? He did it because I guilted him into it. I'm not sorry I did it, but I don't think we have a choice between Balthazar and Damon. Balthazar might be it.
Did it hurt Julian that this Damon might not want him? It was absurd to even consider that would be the case. Anyone would want Julian. This Damon must be a fool. Julian turned those keen, purple, such a compelling color eyes onto him.
Balthazar likes you. I mean, he's got that look.
Christian shifted uncomfortably.
Yes, well, I'm surprised at how good you're being with the idea of joining anyone else's home. I don't think we can do this all by ourselves. Not yet, anyways. So it's good that Balthazar wants to help us.
Julian admitted with a shrug.
Later, we can figure out how we can go on together. Immortality is a really long time. He wants to help himself to us. And speaking of Balthazar, I should get out there before he gets too interested in what we're saying, and if he hasn't been listening already, he'll start.
Christian headed towards the door.
Christian?
Julian called. When he turned around, his best friend said,
Just smile at him and see what happens.
Christian shook his head.
You're incorrigible.
He pushed open the door, stepped out, and shut it behind him. Balthazar was halfway down the hall, leaning against the wall, his hands crossed at the wrists behind him. He looked like he was keeping the building up and was content to remain that way until the end of time. Lord Ravenscroft turned his head and feigned surprise at Christian's appearance, even though Christian was certain he was ultra-aware of Christian at all times.
He's a predator. A beautiful predator.
Balthazar pushed off the wall, and in that graceful way turned towards him. Is Julian all right?
He's starving.
Christian wanted to bite back the words as soon as he said them, but they were out, and they were true. Balthazar looked grave. Has he drunk the blood in the bags? They were now 2 feet away from one another. Christian could feel his closeness like they were two magnets that wanted to come together. He had to hold himself firmly to not go nearer. He gritted his teeth. There definitely was something to this master-fledgling connection between them. He had to get a handle on it before it had a handle on him.
No, it doesn't appear appetizing to either of us. But we haven't opened the bags yet. I imagine that may change.
We? Balthazar's eyebrows rose up into his hairline. There is no we, Christian. You drink from me, no matter what. Remember. Christian pressed his lips together. He did not like his choices being limited by anyone's whims, but he knew that Balthazar wasn't solely acting on his own desires. He could tell the Vampire Lord was telling the truth about that much. So he said instead,
I need to know what you intend towards Julian.
Intend? Balthazar's eyebrows waggled as an amused smile crossed his lips. When Christian did not look amused, he became serious. I intend to offer you both a home, a safe place, to teach you, to make things as they should be. Christian's forehead furrowed.
Should be?
You should have been turned together. One bloodline, one house, one master. Balthazar lifted a hand and tucked a stray lock of hair behind Christian's ear. Christian didn't move away in time to avoid the touch, and somehow after it happened, he didn't mind it so much. Then something about what Balthazar said struck him. It sounded like something that the Vampire Lord had been planning.
Did you think about this?
Christian gestured towards himself and then towards Balthazar.
About me and you, and turning Julian and me into vampires?
Balthazar's silver eyes gleamed. How could I not? Those words might have made some people feel treasured, but it only raised a waspish anger in Christian. This time when Balthazar reached up to touch him, Christian caught his wrist. His voice was rough, low, and dangerous.
Did you kill Julian's parents?
Those silver eyes widened. What? No. No.
Do you know who did it? Was it vampires?
Christian peppered the Vampire Lord with questions. He read in Balthazar's expression that he did know, and that it was vampires.
Tell me!
Christian, there is no good to come of those questions. The answers will not bring the Harrows back. Balthazar crossed his arms over his chest. It drew the soft blue cashmere sweater tight over his chest. The V-neck at the top showed a beautiful snippet of bare chest. For a moment, completely against his will, Christian imagined putting his fangs there and letting them pierce the soft skin. His stomach burned with hunger, but he shook it away. He had never let his base instincts rule him before. He certainly wouldn't allow them to now.
Of course there is. Julian can finally know what happened to his parents, and why.
Christian felt his own eyes flash with anger. Would knowing be enough? The person who did this cannot be touched. They are beyond all of our reach. Balthazar's lips writhed back from teeth for a moment, and Christian knew he hated whoever this was. Believe me when I tell you that it would only cause you consternation.
Who is this person?
Christian demanded. The same one that would have murdered Julian and every single vampire in the blood den tonight, he answered. Christian thought of the confessors who appeared to be some kind of religious figures in the vampire world. One of them had mentioned a preceptor.
Does it have something to do with those religious people?
Yes, it does. They are utterly dangerous, Christian. They can do anything without fear of reprisal, Balthazar explained. Killing a couple of mortals wouldn't even have caused a raised eyebrow among our community. Even famous and beloved people like the Harrows. Not even the slaughter of the Siren blood den would have aroused any anger outside of the Sirens themselves, and they wouldn't have dared raise their voices about it outside of their houses.
So you kill everyone who finds out vampires exist? I mean, that has to be the reason for all this,
Christian said. But Balthazar shook his head. We only kill those we must. The Harrows could have been made to forget. You saw what I alone could do to a room full of vampires. Mortals are far easier to control. No, the reason the Harrows were killed and why they want Julian dead is because of Damon. Christian's brow furrowed.
But isn't he your king or whatever?
Balthazar nodded. Damon. Good grief. Even hearing that name is impossible. He shook himself and continued. Damon is, at least, claiming to be an immortal, one of the 11 beings who came to Earth and made the vampires in the first place. He was considered the first among equals, stronger than any of them, but unable to make his own fledglings as his blood was poisonous. He went to sleep to await a day when someone could survive it.
Julian, you mean?
Balthazar gave a wry smile. Julian's survival tells me that this vampire, whoever he is, likely isn't the great King Damon of old, though it appears that certain people think so.
The people who killed the Harrows and want Julian dead? The Order and the Preceptor guy?
Christian guessed. Yes. You see, our whole religion is based on the fact that we killed all the immortals, he explained. They were unjust. They used us as pawns in battles for millennia, or so the tale goes. Who knows if it is true? But in the end, we finally broke free by breaking them. Damon supposedly slept through the whole thing, though the Order claims he was the person who gave us the strength to fight.
I still don't understand why Damon could be why they want us dead. You just said that Damon allegedly gave the vampires the strength to fight against the unjust immortals.
Christian pointed out. The Order does not want Damon to return. Balthazar gave him a rueful look, because they know very well that he didn't give us power to do anything. The immortals were his friends. They were his loyal court, at least some of them. So he wakes up now to find that we killed them all? What do you think he's going to do?
He's going to be pissed,
Christian realized. More than that, I would imagine. Knowing the type that considers themselves royal, he won't be happy merely taking his revenge either. I imagine he thinks he still rules us all. Though we have a vampire council with members coming from all the bloodlines, in the end, the Order is really the ruling power.
So they don't want him back because he'll try to kill them and would likely try to take over from them?
Christian filled in the rest. Balthazar nodded. His very existence would destroy our way of life. If he's the real thing. If he doesn't get killed first.
So Julian is in danger because he's Damon's fledgling?
Christian was starting to see how complicated their new existences were. Absolutely. Other than in my house, he would have been turned over to the Order immediately, as an exiled house. I have no loyalty to them, or any other vampires.
What does being an exiled house mean?
Christian studied him carefully. It means that we have no standing in the vampire world. We have no seat on the council. We are not allowed in Everdark. We are alone. Balthazar sliced a hand through the air. His silver eyes met Christian's. And there's one thing you might want to consider in whether you encourage Julian to drink from me rather than from bags.
What?
You're an exile too, Christian. That can't be changed. This Damon won't want anything to do with us. He won't want Julian to have anything to do with us, Balthazar emphasized. He won't care about keeping you two together. He'll take Julian and part you both, likely forever. Christian went very still. He hadn't known any of this. The thought of losing Julian had him clenching his hands. A faint smile appeared on Balthazar's lips that was not mirthful in the least. So if you want to ensure that you and Julian will be together, I am the only option. Join us next time for episode 15, Whoever Shall Drink of My Blood.
Many people have asked us if there are ebooks of the Everdark series. Yes, now there are ebooks, as well as Everdark merch. Ebooks are available in PDF, EPUB, and Mobi from our own merch shop. Just follow the link in the notes to the Everdark series to read on your phone or any device. And check out the t-shirts, mugs, art prints, and pop sockets while you're at it. Your support really matters to us as small creators, and any purchases go directly to supporting the creation of more stories, just like Everdark and Dragon's Reign. Thanks, you guys.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thelis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.